Ever wondered about misophonia? Why chewing sounds make some brains genuinely furious while others barely notice? What if your rage at a crunching apple isn't rudeness, but wiring? Here's the strange part. For roughly 1 in 5 people, a sound like chewing doesn't just annoy, it hijacks. The jaw tightens. The chest floods with something that feels like anger, but arrives faster than any thought could. And for years, everyone pointed at the ears. Too sensitive, too dramatic, wired to complain about nothing. But the ears turned out to be the wrong suspect entirely. What if the fury has almost nothing to do with hearing? What if it's happening in the part of your brain that plans movement, the same circuits you'd use to chew that apple yourself? Sit with that idea for a moment. Because once you understand where this reaction is really born, the word overreacting starts to fall apart in your hands. This was never a story about noise. It's a story about a brain that quietly mistakes someone else's mouth for its own. You know the moment. The family dinner. Someone reaches for the chips. And before the first crunch even lands, your whole body braces for it. It isn't just that the sound is loud. It's that it becomes the only thing in the room. Your attention narrows to a single point. That mouth, that rhythm, that wet click of teeth against food. You try to be polite. You reach for a fork of your own, hoping to drown it out somehow. You turn up the television. You leave the table with an excuse that nobody quite believes. Misophonia lives in these small, private evacuations. The birthday you spent staring hard at your plate. The car ride where a partner's gum became a silent, invisible war. Nobody sees the fight, because the fight is happening entirely inside you. And here's the strangest thread. The sounds that wreck you are almost always made by a human being. Rarely a machine. Almost always a mouth. Rain on a roof, a droning fan, the hum of traffic. None of it touches you. But one person softly chewing a grape, and the whole nervous system goes to war. That detail alone should have told us something. The problem was never the noise. It was the body making it. Here's what makes it crueler. It's usually not strangers. It's the people closest to you. Researchers who study misophonia keep finding the same pattern again and again. The triggers cluster around family. A parent chewing, a sibling breathing, a partner sipping coffee in the quiet before work begins. The person you love becomes, for 30 unbearable seconds, unbearable. And then the guilt arrives right behind the rage. Because you know they did nothing wrong. They're just eating, just living inside their own body. Yet your nervous system has already filed their most ordinary sound under threat. People with misophonia often describe a very specific loneliness here. Not the loneliness of being alone, the loneliness of being flooded with fury at someone you'd never want to hurt, and having no language to explain why. So they start eating separately, wearing headphones at dinner, building a quiet architecture of avoidance around the very ones they love most, all to escape a sound that lasts a single second. And the closer the bond, the sharper the trigger tends to be. Something about attention, about how much of another person your brain is already tracking, seems to load the reaction. You mirror the people you love the most, which may be exactly why they can hurt you without lifting a finger. So for years, the assumption was simple. Overactive hearing, a volume problem. Turn down the world, and the anger would surely fade. But when scientists actually looked, the ears came back clean. In people with misophonia, the auditory system, the raw machinery of hearing itself, works essentially like everyone else's. The trigger sounds aren't louder to them. They aren't physically painful. Measured on their own, a chewing sound is just a chewing sound, nothing more. Which left a genuine mystery sitting on the table. If the ears are normal and the sound is neutral, where exactly is the fury coming from? Something was translating an ordinary noise into an emergency, something downstream of hearing. The answer, when a team in Newcastle finally traced it, didn't sit in the part of the brain that listens at all. It sat in a region most of us would never think to suspect, the part of your brain that moves your face. Not the part that hears the world, the part that acts on it. And that single shift, from ear to muscle, quietly rewrote the whole diagnosis. In 2021, a group led by Sukhbinder Kumar at Newcastle University published a study with a title that reframed everything. They called it the motor basis for misophonia. Using brain imaging, they watched what happened inside sufferers as they heard their trigger sounds. And the region that lit up wasn't only about emotion or only about hearing. It was the premotor cortex, specifically the part that controls the orofacial muscles. The throat, the lips, the tongue, the exact muscles you would use to chew. In people with misophonia, that motor region was abnormally, involuntarily activated by the mere sound of someone else eating. Their brains weren't simply listening to chewing. On some level, they were rehearsing it. The circuitry that would move their own mouth switched on, uninvited, in response to a mouth that wasn't even theirs. That's the twist that changes the entire story. The problem was never in how they heard. It was in how their body silently answered. To understand why that matters, think about mirror systems. Your brain doesn't just observe actions. It quietly simulates them beneath the surface. Watch someone reach for a cup, and the motor circuits you'd use to reach flicker faintly in echo. It's how we read intention. It's how we feel what other people feel. Now imagine that mirror turned up too high and aimed straight at a mouth. When someone with misophonia hears chewing, the orofacial motor system doesn't just echo. It overfires, as though the brain were trying to take the action over completely, as though it needed to finish the movement itself. And there's an old clue that fits this perfectly. Long before the imaging existed, sufferers had a strange coping trick they discovered entirely on their own. They would mimic, chew along, move their own jaw in rhythm with the trigger. Researchers had noted it years earlier and found it odd, but it was the body telling the truth about itself. Mimicking helped because it finished the movement the brain had already started. So here's the deeper question this opens up. If your brain is running someone else's chewing as if it were your own motor command, what does an unfinished command actually feel like? Think about it carefully. A movement your brain begins but cannot control because the mouth belongs to someone across the table. You can't stop it. You can't complete it either. You're left holding a motor action with no way to finish it and no way to release it. That is an annoyance. That is a system caught mid-gesture, straining against itself. Some researchers think this is exactly why the reaction feels so physical, so much like pure rage. The anger might not be about the sound at all. It might be the felt experience of a body trying to seize control of a movement it can never actually own. Which raises something much bigger. How much of what we call emotion is really our motor system, reacting to a world it keeps trying to move through us? Now widen the lens to a whole life. Misophonia usually begins young, often in childhood or early adolescence, frequently around the age of 9 or 10. A child snaps at a parent over chewing and gets called rude, ungrateful, difficult. They don't have the words for it. They only have the flood. So they learn something quietly corrosive, that their reactions are shameful, and that they cannot explain them to anyone. And that belief follows them into relationships where a partner's eating becomes a source of secret dread, into workplaces where an open-plan office full of snacking colleagues turns the afternoon into an endurance test, into restaurants they avoid, dinners they cancel, trips they quietly don't take. The condition rarely destroys a life in one dramatic blow. It does something slower and harder to see. It narrows it. Each avoided meal, each pair of headphones, each excuse, a small subtraction. And because the trigger sounds so trivial to everyone else, the person carrying it usually decides the safest thing is to say nothing at all. And that silence carries a cost of its own. When you don't understand why your body reacts, you fill the gap with a story. And usually the story is about your character. I'm impatient. I'm intolerant. I'm a bad partner, a bad daughter, a bad friend. People with misophonia often carry years of that self-blame before they ever hear the word for what they actually have. They assumed the flaw was moral when it was neurological all along. There's a particular relief that shows up in interviews with sufferers in the exact moment they learn it has a name, that it's a recognized pattern, studied in labs, mapped inside real brains. The The relief isn't that it's cured. It isn't cured. The relief is simpler than that. They were never the monster they had feared they were. The rage was never a choice. It was a reflex, running far below the level where choice even happens. And you cannot be guilty of a reflex you never once authorized. Think of the flinch when something flies at your eye. You don't decide it. It decides for you. This is closer to that than to any moral failing, a fast automatic answer from a system built long before your opinions ever arrived. So why would a brain ever be built this way? Here's the reframe. The orofacial mirror system isn't a defect. It's a feature, and one that usually serves us beautifully. Simulating other people's mouth movements is part of how we learn to speak, how we read faces, how we sense when someone is about to cry or laugh or lie to us. We are wired to catch each other's smallest movements because for most of human history, reading the people around us was survival itself. Misophonia may be that very same finely tuned mirroring, simply turned up past the point of usefulness. The sensitivity that lets you feel others deeply is, in another key, the sensitivity that floods you at a dinner table. It isn't a broken brain. It's a brain that mirrors too well. The gift and the affliction may be the exact same wiring, only pointed at different sounds, which is a strangely hopeful thing to learn about yourself, and you are far from alone in it. For a long time, misophonia was dismissed as a quirk, or not believed at all. Then in 2023, researchers at King's College London ran one of the largest studies of its kind. Their estimate was striking. Roughly 18% of people, nearly 1 in 5, experience meaningful misophonic responses. That is not a rare disorder. That is a huge, quiet slice of humanity, sitting at dinner tables everywhere, silently bracing. It only stayed invisible because the trigger seemed far too small to admit out loud. Who confesses that a crunching apple made them want to scream? So people suffered privately, convinced they were uniquely broken, while the person sitting across the very same table might have been fighting the identical battle. The science is still young, to be fair. Misophonia was only formally defined about 20 years ago, and researchers still debate its exact boundaries. But the direction is clear now. This is real, it's common, and it has a mechanism. Earlier work by the same field had already linked misophonia to the brain's salience network, the system that decides what deserves your alarm. Put the pieces together, and a picture forms. A sound flagged as urgent, handed straight to the muscles of the mouth. So what can you actually do with all this? Not a cure. There isn't one yet. And anyone promising one is selling you something. But the motor theory hints at something gentle worth trying, as an experiment on yourself. First, the reframe itself is a tool. In the moment of the flood, some people find it steadies them to silently name what's happening. This is my motor system, not my judgment of this person. That small act of separation can loosen the grip of the shame. Second, that old sufferer's trick has real logic behind it now. Discreetly engaging your own jaw, chewing gum, sipping water, giving your orofacial muscles their own gentle rhythm can quiet the system that's straining to complete a movement. And third, distance and warning help far more than willpower ever will. Naming your triggers to the people you trust turns a private war into a shared, manageable fact. None of this erases misophonia, but it can shrink the space it quietly steals from a life. So the next time a crunching apple lights a fire, you can't quite explain. You'll know what you're really feeling. Not rudeness, not intolerance. A body that mistook someone else's mouth for a movement of its own and simply couldn't let it finish. The fury was never about the sound. It was about a gesture your brain began and could never complete. So look again at those crumbs, flying in slow motion across the table. They were never the enemy. And the person making the sound was never the enemy either. Your brain simply reached across the table for a movement that belonged to someone else and found it could not put the gesture down. That's the whole of it. Not fury at a sound. A body reaching to finish what was never its to hold.